Let's see now. Give it a couple seconds to get this fucking thing working. Some confirmation would be nice. Come on, reload. And in theory it should show up eventually. Oh, there we go. Oops, there we go. Mute on that end. There we go. Oh, and we have some comments already. Okay. Hey guys, how's it going? This is going to be something a little bit different. I'm not doing an actual hangout tonight. A little bit late starting because I was talking with Rose, my editor, for a little bit of a while there. Of course, the little talk's going to be going on for a bit there in the sidebar. Para got a little bit of a practice run of this earlier, so he already knows what is on its way in theory. I'm referring to this as first draft theater. One of the stories I was working on a bit of a while ago is called Star Chaser's Tale. It takes place in the same sci-fi universe, let's just say, as the book that hopefully we'll get those last 13 chapters actually dealt with in a reasonable time span, but Rose has been having some problems with back problems and sciatica and this kind of stuff, so it's been hard for her to actually sit down and do the edit. So that's been a little bit rough lately on that end, so we're still waiting for her to hopefully get well soon so that we can get back to work on this damn thing, because I only have 13 chapters left to get edited before I can release the ebook. And that's going to be released through Kindle eBooks through Amazon. But while I'm waiting on that, I need to still have something to deal with here. So let me see if I can actually find the right version of this frickin' thing. Give me a second here. Let me bring it up. There were a couple ones that I was playing with, including some minor ones. I was considering doing instead of this one, but I decided to settle for this, which is, I'm only about 100 pages into it. It's only been really looked over once in terms of a rough edit, so it's still fairly rough, all things considered, and it should be somewhere on the desktop. Let me find the damn thing. Come on. Lorik, where are you? When I was initially working on this particular story, the idea was to do a sellout thing. The very first book that when I tried to initially submit it to publishing companies, there were only two real options that I had: Bane and Daw. And Bane had a 6-month turnaround. Daw, on the other hand, is supposed to get back to you within 30 days. And they ended up getting back to me about 4 months later, so that was a little bit of a waste. In the long run, I believe that I made the wrong choice. I probably should have tried going with Bane, because I found out after the fact that Mr. Bane, the head of the company, used to actually read all the stories when they were first submitted, so I might have had a better chance with that instead of some intern or whatever that actually does the main initial look over for manuscripts sent into DAW books. And when I finally got back the results of them looking it over and getting back to me, it was the response was, it is not standard enough for the market, and you'd have to have a pre-existing audience for us to try and put it out there. So in other words, they basically said, well, yeah, this is too original, sorry. So I decided to write a sellout piece. So I went through my very different characters, and there's one specific race out in Corrales. That's what I refer to the universe as in my science fiction. That these are a tiger-like race, and I have this one particular character that was originally put in the main book, Pathways of Midgard, as a bit of a cameo character. And I put him in there kind of as a joke for a friend of mine, the person that had talked me into introducing this race into the role-playing game on which most of my stories are based on. And this particular friend of mine, pushed and pushed and pushed, and I said, okay, sure, fine, I'll include a tiger-like race, because the only cat-like race we had at the time were known as the Cheshire, which are these, they're more like the house cats. They're very flighty, and flaky does not begin to describe it. In role-playing game terms, this is a character that you're walking down the proverbial street in the game, and they stop to look in every window whenever there's something shiny, and stop in the middle of combat to groom themselves. That was the only feline race we had at the time. So my friend, being this absolutely huge fan of cats, and one of these people that likes cats better than people, etc. He wasn't actually a furry before the internet, but he might as well have been in terms of the way he had a weird thing for cats, let's just say. Yeah, just really weird. You know, it's one of those things that you have somebody walking down the street and he hears that and he hears about somebody being mean to an animal or what have you, particularly a cat, and he's like, and he's all of a sudden getting all homicidal over it. It was really kind of bizarre. So, in any case, the character Baron Deloric, the feline tiger pirate captain character, was thrown in there in the story Pathway to Midgard, the main story. It's kind of a joke and a wink and a nod to my friend. So when I was deciding what to do for a sellout piece, the first thing I came up with was a fantasy novel idea and I might actually do a telling of that if I can find the outline. I know it's around here somewhere. But that one didn't really come out as much of a sellout piece. It actually came out fairly good. So I ended up scrapping that, but it was a generic story to the point that the characters were named things like generic elf 1, stereotypical dwarf 2, standard ugly troll 1. The names were things like this because I was just really pissed off of the publishing industry at the time. And then I heard that my friend, the cat lover, the one that had inspired the Tarzan race, as well as the initial introduction of Baron Deloric into the main story, had passed away. He literally worked himself to death. My friend's name was Todd. He's a really good guy. A little dense sometimes. We used to refer to him as with the nickname of Cement Head, and it was kind of an apt name. But in his particular case, he'd come down with walking pneumonia, and he felt sick and kept going to work. And he went to work and he went to work and he went to work and he kept setting doctor's appointments, and they kept calling him and saying, no, we need you in here. We need you in here. And he kept saying, I gotta go to the doctor. I haven't been feeling well for weeks. And it finally got to the point that he went in one day and he ended up leaving in an ambulance, and that was it for him. He didn't survive the night, and he was in his 30s at the time, still fairly young. I think at the time he was probably about, 37, 38. This kid's birthday is just a few days after my own, so he and I had been good friends for a long time. So this was a bit of a blow to me, somebody that I grew up with and all this stuff. To give you a vague frame of reference, one of the reasons why he and I were such great friends was the fact that he didn't drink. So whenever I was invited to a party, I'd bring him along as a designated driver. So for the longest time, we were inseparable in that I always needed a driver because I was always going to parties and getting drunk off my gourd in my youth. You know, the 20s. This is what happens when you're in your 20s. You go to the parties, you get drunk, and if you can find somebody that never drinks, rock on. But yeah, after he passed, I decided that instead of going with a generic fantasy novel to try and poke fun at all the pulp fiction that's put out there, and pulp fantasy more so, I decided to tell Loric's tale. Loric of the Starchaser clan, eventually to become the head of the Mercantile Marines, the pirate captain Baron Deloric. And on that note, having given a little bit of a preamble here, perhaps too much of a preamble, and once again sorry that I'm starting a little bit late today, let's see if we can get started here. Now, in my earlier run today, I was tripping over my words constantly, and I had to make a couple edits on the fly. Keep in mind, this is a rough draft. And let's start at Chapter 1. Yes, we are going to be doing an audiobook. Well, in this particular case, I'm reading it as if it was one. As for the Pathways book, the actual book that I'm working on getting published as an ebook, I am planning on trying to get things organized and doing an audiobook on that, but that's later down the road. But for the moment, let's see if I can get myself in the mental space to do this, and I'm probably going to need my glasses, so I should probably find those. I need to get a new script, but hopefully these will do for now. Let me see if I need to adjust font size, but being able to actually look through them would be nice. Looking through foggy glasses doesn't tend to help much. But once again, no, this isn't the main book. This is just a secondary thing that I wrote for the heck of it. One of a few. I have a couple other little things that are kind of sitting there on the side that I'm deciding what I'm going to do with, and not being able to type right now, and due to the fact that I'm still in cognitive recovery after the stroke has been causing some intermittent problems, we'll just call it. Actually, it looks like I might be able to actually read properly today. Let's do a select edit, and let's just change the font size slightly, and that should, in theory, do the trick. Let me move some of these windows out of my way here. Here we go. And let's see now. Select all. Where are you? Let's see now. Select all, and let's change the font size up to there. Hopefully that'll do the trick. Okay. Star Chaser's Tale, Chapter 1. Lorik took a moment to check the sharpness of the claws and groom his thick fur. The Sky Shuttle would be arriving soon to take him to his trial of adulthood. He didn't want to give the Academy an excuse to fail him this year, as he had for the past 2 years. He walked over to the external portal and placed his paw on the scanning pad next to the domed force field. This was the only technology permitted within the Cub's den. A faint crackling hum came from the field projectors as the portal opened. Lorik walked through the doorway onto the earthen ledge outside of his living area. He inhaled deeply as he let himself adjust to the thin outside air. His clan's reputation had earned them a high place within their communal spire. These structures reached far into the skies of the planet Carmal. His home was one of the old living structures in the area. The tough, rocky outer shell of the cavernous complex had been worn by the weather enough for dense foliage to have taken root on the many cliff faces. Thin ledges connected many of the dens together, but traversing the outer pathways was treacherous, and could easily cost an inexperienced cub their life. Volume okay, guys? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Of course, I have to wait for y'all to catch up with me, apparently. Just want to make sure I have decent volume before continuing. Okay, rock on, thanks. Lorik looked down over the ledge and wondered if he'd finally be able to move out of his den into the adult housing. The morning mist still hung heavily around the base of the complex, completely obscuring his view of the jungles far below. A cool, damp breeze blew past him. Lorik shivered as he thought about all the entitlements of adulthood. As a youth, he was required to stay close to nature, which, at the most basic level, barred the use of clothing altogether. In spite of this strictly enforced regulation, it was nevertheless the least of the restrictions upon young cubs. Lorik, as a young cub, wasn't allowed to own any technological devices, challenge the opinion of adult, or even choose his future profession. Regardless, the things Lorik truly desired were nevertheless irrelevant, and the sorts of profession he desired simply didn't exist within the Karzan society. His ears twitched as he heard the Sky Shuttle approaching. It wasn't yet in view, but sounded close. He couldn't afford to make any mistakes this year, as this would be his last opportunity to complete the trial successfully. If he failed this time, the Inquisitor would declare him unfit for social integration, and he'd be banished to a remote colony working somewhere within the synthetic meat industry, the most hazardous industry within the Empire. Lorik would have no choice but to attempt to lie to the Inquisitor if he wanted to pass the final test. He spent a month attempting to perfect the art of deception. He'd have to still his tongue and say just what they wanted to hear to show the Inquisitor he can be a good fit within their society. If Lorik managed to reach the upper echelons of society, he'd be permitted to stop being another mindless drone and have an actual opinion of his own. He'd need to spend a lifetime as another Hang on one second. Sorry about that, I lost my spot there. He'd need to spend a lifetime as another cog in the Karzan military machine if he wanted a chance to make a difference. But he often wondered if it was really worth the effort. His father was one of the few lucky ones who had found a way to escape from the Karzan way of life. The Sky Shuttle emerged from the mist below and rapidly drew towards his position. Lorik stepped back from the edge to give himself a little bit more distance to prepare for his leap onto the platform. The shuttles used during the trial differed greatly from the models used for public transit. Instead of broad landing platforms, they had only a narrow walkway lining the outside of the airships. Landing on that ledge could be a bit tricky. Now, if your jump came up short, you could get drawn into the anti-gravity pontoons, or even fall to your death. If you jumped too far, on the other hand, you'd slam into the side of the ship. You'd end up on the ledge, but you'd lose points before the official test even started. The shuttle slowed and steadied into position 10 feet from the end of the ledge. "Lorik, of the Star Chaser clan," the driver called out. "Are you ready?" "I am ready," Lorik roared in response. "Recite the Academy Creed," the driver said forcefully. Lorik took a deep breath and answered as loudly and clearly as he could. "We have teeth to bite, claws to rend. We are the descendants of the great felines of the savannah, and our hearts still keep beat with the drums of war. We are Karzan. If you have the courage of your forefathers, you may come aboard," said the driver. Lorik took only a half step before leaping onto the narrow ledge. He landed easily and hurried inside the air shuttle. "That looked far too easy," the driver teased. "I knew I should have parked further out. You've certainly grown a lot in the last year." "You remember me from last year?" Lorik asked as he decided which of the 4 empty seats he wanted to sit in. "You're not easy to forget," the driver said with a chuckle. Soft growls betrayed the annoyance of the other cubs, which were destined to face the trials alongside him. He was the only member of the Star Chasers being tested this year, so the others knew nothing about him other than his physical size. He towered over most of them at nearly 7 feet tall. "This is your 3rd test, isn't it?" the driver asked. "How old are you now?" Lorik attempted to ignore the chuckles and jeers from the other cubs. "I'm almost 8. "And this is your last chance to complete the trial," the driver remarked as they sped off towards their next stop. "It sure is," Lorik grumbled just over the sound of the snickering of his peers. "If I don't make it past the Inquisitor this year, that'll be the end of it." "I heard all about it," the driver said with a note of sorrow. "You were top-rated both years, right? You're the one that failed during the final stage, the Inquisition, right?" "That's me," Lorik muttered. The other cubs fell silent momentarily, then began whispering softly amongst themselves. I don't know why I'm looking at the chat. The other cubs all fell silent momentarily. They began whispering softly amongst themselves. Here we go. Lorik glanced around at each of them. He could guess which clans they each belonged to based upon the markings and colorations. There are very few family groups which didn't have either stripes or spots. As the shuttle slowed to halt near a platform on the side of a different spire, Lorik marveled at the dark, glistening metallic veins running through the outer shell of the structure. It had a beautiful yet ominous look about it. He wondered what additional minerals were used in the staging process to get such a distinctive look. Very few clans had enough influence to have custom habitats. The rich foliage which clung to the outer wall showed the ancient heritage of the structure, as well as its inhabitants. Yeah. No, I'm distracting me by actually looking at the chat. This is the thing is, I'm going to take a very brief break to explain part of the point of me doing this. With the stroke, what essentially happened was one of the parts of my brain that was hit pertains to focus and being able to pay attention. It affected my ability to concentrate and read and what have you. As well as it's going to affect my ability to write for the time being. It's kind of just one of those things. So part of this technically for me is therapy, which is why I'm forcing my way through this. And because the anticipating the next word is really the part that I need to get back down, that thinking a couple words ahead of where I'm actually reading. So I really have to get that down and work on that so that I can just have some fun with it. Anyway, in any case, this is once again a first draft as well, and it's very much an incomplete work at this point. Okay, there we go. Let me get back to where I was. Let's see now. Rich foliage clung to the outer walls, showed the ancient heritage of the structure as well as its inhabitants. "Faru of the Shadow Fang clan," the driver called out. "Are you ready?" Lorik looked in surprise at the sleek, black-furred cubs standing on the landing. Shadowfang was an ancient clan, respected beyond reproach. "I am ready," Faru replied. Her voice was strong, yet sultry. The look in her yellow eyes was both primal and predatory. Recite the Academy Creed, the driver instructed. She responded swiftly. We have teeth to bite, claws to rend. We are the descendants of the great felines of the savannah, and our hearts still keep beat with the drums of war. We are Karzan. Those words, which often sounded hollow, echoed the conviction within her heart. They clearly had a deeper meaning for her than they held for Lorik. There was a passion in her voice, which he was sure he'd never forget. If you have the courage of your forefathers, you may come aboard, the driver recited. As she ran to the edge of the ledge, outside of the living area, Lorik was struck by the grace and power of her movements. As rude as it was considered to stare at a female, he simply couldn't avert his gaze. She was beautiful and agile. Yet her timing was all wrong. Lorik bounded over the seats in front of him, grabbed onto the doorway, and swung his body outside, grasping Faro by the wrist as she fell short of the narrow ledge on the side of the shuttle. I could have recovered, she hissed. You could have been sucked into the anti-gravity pontoon or fallen to your death, Lorik said with a big toothy grin. Now we'll never know the outcome. Now we'll never know which outcome would have been the end result. You'll just have to accept the point deduction and live to resent my interference. I suppose you're right, she remarked with a sly, thankful look in her eyes. Lorik helped her onto the platform and led her into the shuttle. The driver didn't look happy. Lorik, the driver growled, you're not to interfere with the trial process. Feel free to disapprove, Lorik sneered. There's no official rule against it. I can give and take away points as I see fit, the driver said with a deep guttural growl, and you will be penalized regardless of what the rules are. If you think your only challenge this year will be the Inquisition, you'll pay for that arrogance. I'm going to split her 20-point deduction for missing the platform between you and your little girlfriend. I've never met this rash cub before, Faro objected. I'll just cut your penalty in half, Lorik purred softly. Accept it as an offering of respect for you and your clan. You have both spots and stripes, but you don't seem lowborn. She regarded him with suspicion as she asked, what clan do you belong to? Star Chaser, Lorik answered with a crooked grin. Take a seat, the driver ordered, before I change my mind to give you both the full penalty. Lorik returned to his seat, and Faro sat in an available seat diagonally behind him. Only 2 empty seats remained as the shuttle sped off to its next destination. Thank you, Star Chaser, Faro said quietly. I do appreciate your sacrifice. What's your birth name? Lorik, he answered with a slight bow of his head. I'll not forget it, she said with a slight note of suspicion. But I must ask you if you'd have rushed to my aid if I wasn't a member of the Shadowfang clan. I assure you, Lorik teased. Incurring the debt and gratitude of your clan wasn't even a consideration at the time. My impulsiveness came from far different motives. Really, she purred slyly. Then what were your motives? Mine, he teased. The shuttle slowed as it approached its next stop. It was a newer structure. It was light brown in color, and the outer shell of the spire hadn't eroded enough for anything more than a few patches of grass and vines to have taken root. The cub standing there on the landing had a short mane, thick stripes on his flanks, and scattered faint orange spots throughout his tan-colored fur. Not a very attractive clan, Faro remarked, but he certainly looks stalwart. I didn't expect a member of the eldest clan to speak so kindly of a low-born clan, Lorik snickered softly. It was a fair assessment, she objected. There's a glassy dimness in his eyes that I can see even at this distance, Lorik said with dismay and a slight chuckle. Star Chasers choose mates based upon cunning and intelligence. Clearly this clan opts for brute strength. Korak of the Bone Ripper clan, the driver called out. Are you ready? Yes, the cub replied. You might be right about this one, Faro mused. I say again, the driver roared angrily. Korak of the Bone Ripper clan, are you ready? I am ready, he replied after a momentary bout of confusion. Recite the Academy Creed, the driver said forcefully. We have teeth to bite, claws to rend. he called out proudly and then faltered. We are great felines of the savannah. Our hearts beat the drums of war. Wow, the driver grumbled. Is he dense or unprepared? We are Karzan, Korak called out. I almost forgot that part. If you have the courage of your forefathers, you may come aboard, the driver recited, while shaking his head in amused disbelief. The broad-shouldered cub ran to the side of the building, lowered himself onto all fours, and charged towards the end of the ledge while roaring a battle cry. This doesn't look good, Faru remarked. Not at all, Lorik agreed. Are you planning to rescue this one? Not a chance, Lorik chuckled as Korak slammed headlong into the side of the shuttle. That sounded painful, Faru said with a faint yet unmistakable giggle. He hasn't fallen off yet, Lorik said with surprise, as the scraping sound of Korak's claws against the side of the shuttle grew more frantic. He must have caught that ledge with at least one hand. It took nearly 15 minutes, but Korak finally drew himself onto the outer edge of the skyship and walked in through the doorway. That didn't go how I planned. He sounded embarrassed. When I was practicing, I forgot there would be a wall where my head was landing. You made a mess of the call-outs, the driver remarked. You've already lost 10 points for failing to recite the creed properly, and another 20 points on that jump of yours. Are you sure you don't want to just go home and try again next year when you're better prepared? Keep in mind the highest point total you can get is 100. Korak looked confused. I lost 20 and 10. That's 1 0 and 2 zeros. 1 and 2 is 3 and 0 is nothing. I can count to 3 on one hand, but 100 is a lot, so I'm not worried. The driver blinked in disbelief as the rest of the cubs all laughed at Korak's failed attempt at addition. It's 30 points, Lorik yelled over the chorus of laughter. Oh, Korak said. That's 3 sets of fingers. 3 is still less than 100. Do I sit now? You can sit now, the driver said with a faint chuckle. After Korak had finished getting settled in his seat, the shuttle sped off to pick up its last passenger. Lorik, Faru said softly, so why did you help me and not the big oaf? Lorik laughed heartily as he said, he's neither female nor attractive. One must have standards. I have no plans to leave my clan, Faru said playfully, so don't get your hopes up. Don't judge me so harshly, he chided. There's so little beauty left in this world, and there would be far less if you were absent from it. I wasn't barely assisting you or providing a service to your clan. I was preserving a rare and splendid beauty, one of the most brilliant gems within the crown of our nation. Without such natural beauties, our planet would look dull and drab. Beauties such as yours should be cherished as a cultural treasure. She tilted her head and watched him with whimsy in her eyes as he finished his monologue. Lorik finished by adding, taking that into consideration, I felt it was my duty to rush to your aid. She smiled warmly as she asked, has that little routine of yours ever worked? Not yet, Lorik replied with feigned thoughtfulness, but it's certainly worth the effort to get the sort of reaction you're giving me right now. Faru laughed and scratched him on the head. I like you, Lorik Starchaser. I do hope we're both assigned to the same station in society, just so you can continue to entertain me. That would be nice, Lorik said with a faint sigh. That's if I can make it past the Inquisitor. Oh, there's always next year, she soothed. No, Lorik said with a grimace. This is my last chance. Faru watched him silently. Don't ask, Lorik said irritably as he turned his attention away from her and stared out the windows beside him. The shuttle was nearing the edge of the housing region. He could see the blocky industrial sector coming into view in the distance. The factory buildings were only a few decades old and had been built by off-world contractors. Too late, she said softly. The question is there whether it is spoken or not. Do you see those industrial complexes? Lorik said with distaste. They're as out of place here as I feel. They may not match the rest of the architecture, but they're still important to our society. Perhaps the same holds true of you. Their construction was another triumph of our people. We tricked the Cayman into building them for us. Those foolish canines built them in exchange for useless fruit trees. A triumph, Lorik sneered mockingly. No, it was just another case in which we were made fools of by our own warriors' pride. If our leadership had any regard for the art of negotiation, we'd have come out far better in the end. It was the Cayman that came out on top in that deal. The council pounced at their offer without a thought of any future prospects. We traded trees in exchange for increasing our industrial input over 100-fold, Faru snarled indignantly. You consider that a loss? Those exotic fruits which once grew in the depths of our most dangerous jungle regions held mild hallucinogenic properties, making them a valuable trade commodity, Lorik explained. If the leadership had sense enough to cultivate those fruits, it would have given us substantial trading power within our region of space. Should I assume you failed because you don't agree with the leadership? Lorik ignored her inquiry and continued his explanation. When the Cayman arrived, our leaders realized they'd evolved from dogs and immediately considered them to be an inferior species. The Cayman didn't even want the fruit for their own people. They wanted them as an investment for their own future. The few from what you consider useless trees were highly coveted by their mystical brethren, the Lupians, and the only other sentient felinoid race, the Shashir, also coveted the fruits for more recreational reasons. Do you have a point? Faru snapped. We are conquerors. Trade is for the weak. The Cayman tricked the High Council into tearing down some of our most ancient jungles to collect those trees. Thousands of our own people died in the process, and the Cayman have benefited far greater from the fruits of those transparent trees than we have from increased industrial production. We're not a wealthy nation. Without people like my father, our military wouldn't have advanced at all in the last decade. Those are strong words, she scoffed. What station does your father hold that you see as being so vital? He's an accountant, Lorik said proudly. The sound of laughter resounded through the shuttle. The other cubs couldn't see things as Lorik did. Faru, however, was not laughing. The fury in her eyes was unmistakable. He works on a starship, managing the accounts and conducting negotiations, Lorik roared over the mocking gales of laughter. Nearly every scrap of advanced technology within our fleets are the direct result of his negotiations. Silence, Faru ordered as she glared at the laughing cubs. If he wants to boast of his father's value, let's give him the opportunity to defend this claim. The shuttle fell silent under her piercing glare. So, Star Chaser, she said as if she were issuing a challenge for a death match. Name one technology which your father negotiated for, which is of true benefit to us all. There are so many, Lorik said thoughtfully. But I think the escape pods was the most important. So the cowardly and incompetent can live to fight another day, a spotted cub mocked. No, Lorik growled menacing. So the entire crew of one of our starship doesn't need to die when their captain makes a mistake. I don't know about all of you, but I refuse to accept someone else's stupidity as the cause of my death. What other technologies has he brought us? Faru asked with genuine curiosity. Most of our shipboard repair and defensive systems, the entire planetary defense grid, Lorik said with a grin. Without those systems, you're going into battle at a major disadvantage. They were still using crude bulkheads to seal off damaged compartments before my father finally convinced the elders to upgrade. The particle field generators we use now for sealing the damaged hull sections were acquired during one of his trade missions. You lie, Cork scoffed. We are great warriors. All we have, we make, or are take as spoils of war. If you ever wonder if government propaganda campaigns are effective, Lorik scoffed. There is your proof, right over there. It sounds like there may be merits in duties such as your father, Faru said thoughtfully. But I still don't see any real honor in it. Have you ever stopped to consider there could be honor without combat? Korak began laughing loudly. Lorik and Faru both looked over at him with annoyance. He said honor without combat, Korak said uneasily. I thought he was making a joke. He sounded serious to me, the spotted cub sneered. Do yourself a favor and just ignore him. Ideas like his are dangerous, and he'll eventually be cast out for them. What clan are you from? Faro asked the spotted cub, so I may address you properly. I am Miyako of the Golden Pad clan, the spotted cub responded proudly. Golden Pad? Faru asked. Footpads, or were you adopted into your clan? I'm surprised you don't know of my clan. We're young but powerful. We're all spotted, so we do bear a name representing the speed of our legs and feet. I'd be offended, but I do see how the clan name could be mistaken for a striped clan name. Most striped clans use some variation of the word claw, a white-furred cub with black stripes commented. It prevents a lot of confusion. There are a few that use the word paw, but they're old enough that it doesn't much matter. I'll try to keep that in mind, Farah said. But not all clans are as obvious as yours. Silverclaw, Lorik said with a nod. An influential and well-respected clan, Farah remarked. The striped cub smiled proudly. It's nice to receive praise from a member of the markingless tooth clans. There aren't many of your kind left, or so I've been told. My mother was a member of Silverclaw, Lorik remarked. She joined Starchaser almost 30 years ago. But she has nothing but the highest praise for your clan. You have the right to be proud. She left? The striped cub asked curiously. Was she cast aside by the clan, or did she reject it? What's her name? Karu, Lorik answered with a crooked grin. Really? The striped cub said in surprise. Faru blinked in disbelief. Your mother is Karu Silverclaw? She's called Karu Starchaser now, Lorik said with a shrug. A soft murmur passed through the shuttle as the other cubs recognized his mother's name. Unthinkable, Miyako scoffed. Why would a great warrior like Karu bear young with a mere accountant? She was once a member of the Great War Council. Yes, she was, Lorik said with a grin. But she left the council because she'd grown tired of their stupidity. The Starchaser breeding program is designed to produce more intelligent cubs. She hoped to raise cubs who could implement combat strategies beyond merely attacking and retreating. She was a true tactician, but the other generals on the War Council never understood her method. I still wonder why she'd agree to a pairing with an accountant, Faru said with a shrug. My father taught me that the art of negotiations is just a different kind of tactical combat, Lorik explained. It's a battle of mind and will which rely on instincts most Karzan have long forgotten. My mother agreed to the matings in the hopes of having cubs with his ability to quickly analyze situations and adapt to it. What she wanted from him was a different kind of tactical brilliance. You think too much, Korak sneered. How many cubs were in your litter? Faru asked. I was the last born in a litter of 6, Lorik answered. We lost one brother during the first few weeks. Another died during her second year when she lost her footing while exploring the outside of our communal spire. The other 3 were accepted into the elite forces 2 years ago. I assume they don't see the world the way you do, the striped cub said. Lorik asked, What's your name, Silverclaw? Eru, the striped cub answered. You're right, Eru, Lorik admitted. I was the only one which had an interest in foreign cultures, and I think that's part of why I see things so differently. Foreign cultures, Miyako sneered. The ideas of alien cultures are toxic. We are Karzan. There is much we can learn from cultures which have existed for millions of years longer than ours. Culturally, we're all just young cubs, still playing with a ball of yarn while they have forged their broad dominions throughout all of Karalis. We are conquerors, Miyako said indignantly. One day we will crush all of those nations. Lorik sighed heavily. You keep quoting the elders. When was the last time you used your own words? Eru grinned and Faru giggled. Miyako glared and Korak watched them all with a glassy-eyed look of confusion. The sky shuttle slowed as it approached a housing spire, which bordered on the residential district. Most of the foliage on the side of the building looked yellow and sickly. As they drew around the side which faced the industrial complexes, the foliage as well as the outer shell of the spire darkened until they finally pulled up in front of a soot-covered landing belonging to the final cub on the driver's list. The shuttle stopped closer to the ledge than it had for the other cubs. "Jarum, of the Firetail clan," the driver called out. "Are you ready?" "Firetail?" Miyako said in surprise. "I thought the pygmy clans weren't required to face the trial." "I am ready," Jarum responded eagerly. "They're not," Lorik noted. "But if they don't want to be stuck working in those factories, they have to be tested like the rest of us." The fur on Jarum's hands and feet was a rich orange-brown which faded to white on her forearms and legs. Black stripes zigzagged across her arms and legs, but the rest of her fur was a mottled blend of black, white, and brown. The tips of her ears were accented by small tufts of black fur. She stood a mere 4 feet tall, roughly half the height of her peers, and looked slender and frail. "Recite the Academy Creed," the driver instructed. Jarum called out. "We have teeth to bite, claws to rend. We are the descendants of the great felines of the savannah, and our hearts still keep beat with the drums of war. We are Karzan. If you have the courage of your forefathers, you may come aboard," the driver recited. "I will," Jarum scoffed loudly, "as soon as you move that shuttle to the correct distance." "This is the correct distance for a member of one of the tail clans," the driver said angrily. "I demand that you move to the full 10 feet, she countered. "I demand to be treated no differently than the others." "Well," Lorik said appreciatively, "she certainly got spunk." "I hope you don't plan to save her too," Faru glowered. "That's fine by me." The driver scoffed at Jarum as he moved the shuttle further from the platform. "I wouldn't dare interfere," Lorik said with a smile. "Just based upon the look in her eyes, I think she can do it. I've been told members of the tail clans always land on their feet." Jarum ran to the edge of the landing and effortlessly leapt high into the air. She rotated her tail and body as she sailed through the air. She landed deftly, silently, with her back resting against the side of the shuttle. "Spunk and style," Lorik noted. "I like this one." "Too showy," Faru said with disdain. "Do I hear jealousy?" Eru teased. "I'm not jealous," Faru insisted. "Maybe you should be," Jarum said as she walked through the doorway into the shuttle. "Never mistake size for stature." Faru growled deep in the back of her throat and began to stand. "Calm down," Lorik insisted. "The pygmy clans may be well regarded, but they've never been well respected. If it takes a little bravado to be treated as an equal, so be it." "Bravado?" Jarum scoffed. "Don't take me so lightly." "I meant no disrespect," Lorik said with a grin. "I also understand the desire to be noticed, but honestly there are times when it can be beneficial to be underestimated. It may do you some good to keep that in mind, little miss." Faru leaned back in her chair and grumbled irritably. "There are also times," Eru chuckled, "when it's better to keep your mouth shut. Isn't that right, Lorik?" "Yes, there are," Lorik agreed, then smiled as he said, "but this isn't one of those times." "The fool," Miyako said. "He manages to capture the interest of a member of the Shadowfang clan, and then casts her aside to play word games with some boastful pygmy cub." Lorik sighed dramatically. Pay attention to the words which fall from your lips," Jarum roared at Miyako, "lest you make a mess of your coat. Didn't your mother ever teach you to chew on your words before letting them pass through your lips?" "Don't even think about it," Faru sneered as Miyako's muscles began to tighten in preparation to pounce. "Make one move toward that firetail cub, and I'll have your throat between my teeth before you hit the ground." "Never interfere in the rivalry of women," Lorik remarked to Eru before turning his attention to Miyako. "They may be at the pinnacle of their beauty when they're enraged, but only a fool would dare draw that rage onto themselves willingly." "Lorik," Korak asked, "but didn't you make them angry first?" Lorik grinned broadly. "No, I merely brought out their competitive instincts. Their proud warrior spirit, if that's easier for you to understand. Don't forget, my mother is a tactician, and my father is a master negotiator. I don't expect you to fully understand what's happening here, but if you'd like, I'd be willing to explain it to you. Really? Faru said with a playful note of cynicism in her voice. I'd love to hear that explanation. So would I, Jarm said in a delightfully sardonic tone. Era's ears perked up as he sat forward. Lorik sat quietly for a moment, enjoying their attention. When a young beauty catches the eyes of a male, they try to assert themselves over any other females that seem to hold the gaze of the one they desire. It's pure instinct at work. Miyako has been showing resentment towards me since he first spoke. He has no real reason to dislike me, other than his disapproval of the attention which Faru has given me. Miyako's spotted ears lowered in embarrassment. His attempts to belittle me, Laura continued, are just posturing to try and make himself seem superior. It's clearly not working. I doubt he's ever dealt with a member of one of the Fang clans, so that's to be expected. Faru's far too regal, by nature, to have much regard for male posturing. Keep going, Faru purred. Laura grinned broadly at her approval. Faru's objective in talking to me wasn't at all related to attraction or my assistance. I showed myself as being different from the others she'd met, and thus I became a curiosity. She's a member of one of the Shadow clans, which have a long heritage of stalking their prey. Her goal was to try and understand me. I doubt that mating prospects ever crossed her minds. Nice try, Faru said triumphantly, but I had taken a moment to consider that possibility. Eventually, Lorik said with a warm smile. The very moment I turned my attention toward another female, Jarum, you became territorial. That's not true, Faru objected. You were seeming a bit hateful to me, Arrow said softly. Well, she admitted, maybe a little. Lorik eyed her skeptically, enough that Miyako thought he may be able to earn your favor by speaking badly of Jarum. Naturally, Jarum did nothing to earn anyone's scorn. She was simply trying to gain a little respect through her elaborate jump. I don't honestly believe she was attempting to be boastful. I think it was an attempt to be taken seriously as a competitor. She has more to prove here than the rest of us. If she passes a trial under the exemptions permitted to the Pygmy clan, she will never be fully respected. She needs to make a big show of it and make enough people know what she accomplished. If not, she'll forever be accused of not being fully worthy. Jarum grinned as she spoke. There may be some truth to that. I am representing my entire clan, after all. What about me? Arus said with a note of excitement in his voice. Lorik scoffed playfully before continuing. You're just nosy, and looking to be entertained. Aru feigned anger for a moment before busting into laughter. Fine, Miyako sneered. Then why did the Shadow Fang threaten me? Faru answered for herself. You're trying too hard, and you're irritating. I may see Jarm as a rival, but that doesn't give you the right to speak badly of her. You see me as a rival? Jarm said in surprise. Really? Just a little rival, Faru said with a wink. The Star Chaser was right, Miyako purred faintly. I do like you, Faru, Shadowfang. I'm sorry that I've upset you. Before she could answer, Lorik laughed heartily and said, We're all friends here. Next time, just say what's on your mind instead of hiding behind needless animosity. I like friends, Korak said happily. Eru snickered as he said, Are we now? Yes, Lorik said confidently, although you may not realize it yet. Once we arrive at the testing grounds, we'll be told to split up into teams. Since we've all gotten a chance to know one another, we'll be a step up on the competition. That and each of us is here alone. I've already learned a little about each of your strengths and weaknesses. Having already been through the trial twice, I know exactly how to make the best use of each of you to ensure we achieve the best possible score through the team stages. You failed twice, Miyako said in dismay. And you'd think you'd make a good leader? I failed the Inquisition twice, Lorik said dismissively, but I received the top personal ranking in the trials. Unfortunately for me, ranking doesn't matter once you stand before the Inquisitor. I'm not your friend, Miyako scoffed. What makes you think I'd make a good addition to this team of yours? I don't like you, I don't respect you, and I certainly have no interest in helping you. Maybe not, Lorik said with a vicious grin. But you do like Faru. I'm sure you'd pounce at the chance to put me in my place while proving yourself to her. Aru nodded his head in approval as he spoke. In other words, you expect him to be at his best while challenging you, while Faru and Jarum compete with one another for your attention. Not exactly, Lorik said mischievously. I need your analytical abilities, Korak's physical strength, Faru's stealth, Jarum's speed and agility, and Miyako's determination. I need all of you at your very best. Taking all of that into consideration, with my tactical knowledge, I assure you we will each come out of this with the highest possible rankings. You seem to have forgotten something, Jarum chided. We'll be split into teams of 5, not 6. That's entirely your choice, Lorik said sternly. We can have a team of 6 if you allow yourself to accept that one exemption. I already had a team of 4 in mind before you came aboard. Korak wasn't on the list, honestly. But with your help, I could turn him into a real asset. As it stands now, Faru and I are both 10 points down, and Korak's down 30 points. During the team portion, if we perform well enough, we can easily negate most of those penalties. Korak won't be able to recover completely, but at least it'll give him the chance to be granted a reasonable task in society. Well, think about it, Jarum said softly. The shuttle passed beyond the industrial sector and entered the central dome. Thick masses of ivy clung tightly to the stony outer wall of the domed complex. Let me fix the spelling of that. There, okay. There we go, domed. The silver outer ring of the starport could be seen perched on top of the enormous structure. The testing grounds were set deep within the heart of the enormous sphere. The varied academies and military complexes lined the interior walls. The cubs sat in silent awe as they looked out the windows. Lorik, having seen it twice before, was far less impressed. He was more concerned about forming a cohesive team. He'd taken the first test alongside his littermates, and they all received nearly perfect scores. The second year, half of the candidates he'd tried to win over had rejected his recruitment effort. His second-year team had ended up in the top 5, but that wasn't good enough for Lorik. I think I'd rather lead a team of my own, Eru said thoughtfully while watching Lorik intently. Miyako's ears perked up. I think you'd make an excellent leader. Don't you think so, Faru? Lorik already knows the trials. He'd make a better leader, Faru objected. I don't need to be the official leader, Lorik said as he stared into Eru's eyes. I don't need the title. I'm not after a fleet command position. Eru grinned triumphantly. So it's agreed that I'm recorded as the leader and receive the added glory. The glory, yes. Lorik's eyes narrowed as he spoke. Just not the bonus points. Those are to be used to reduce penalties. Unacceptable, Eru growled. I can delegate those points as I see fit. It's my right as the leader. If Jarum agrees to the exemption, she'll be the source of most of those points. Silverclaw, Faru said angrily. Don't even think we'd let you give all of those extra points to yourself. I won't agree to that, she objected. If they're my bonus points, I should decide what to do with them. I won't allow you or anyone else to use me. Don't worry, Firetail, Lorik said, without breaking eye contact with Eru. I'd want you on my team with or without Eru. I want to give you the chance to prove yourself, which many others wouldn't. I also would like to help Korak secure himself a job which doesn't require smashing rocks. I admit application of those bonus points would help with that goal. However, if personal glory is more important to you than aiding your fellow Karzan, then Perhaps I've misjudged you. Lorik grinned broadly as he stared into Eru's eyes. I'm sorry, Lorik, Jarm said sadly. I didn't mean for it to sound that way. Eru, Lorik said with a sly grin. I believe I have a compromise which you'll find more agreeable. I don't remember agreeing to negotiations, Eru scoffed. Agreement is irrelevant, Lorik said with a grin. You really have little choice in the matter. Jarm won't enter into an agreement for the 6-member exemption unless she's allowed to delegate her bonus points. Miyako would be more willing to follow your leadership. Korak needs an agreement of this sort just to qualify, and Faru's sense of honor won't allow her to follow a leader who's self-serving. Do you see where this leaves us? With me as leader without the authority to delegate points, Eru snickered. You expect me to allow you to be in charge of that? No, Lorik said. Not me. Then who? Miyako said in surprise. The highest unmodified score allowed during the team stage is 50 points, Lorik explained. The goal is for each of us to end the stage with at least that many points. We'll get some additional team points for each task Jarm completes, but there are additional bonuses for speed, teamwork, and efficiency. There are a total of 25 points which can be gained without Jarm's help, and if we win each category, that would be another 10 points. Add that to the 15 potential points Jarm brings to the team, and we could receive a total of 50 bonus points. That'd be enough to not only remove the penalty Faru and I received when I jumped to her aid, but also wipe out the huge 30-point penalty Korak was given. 30 is only 3 sets of hands, Korak said angrily. That's not many. 100 is a lot. 100 is 10 sets of hands, Jarm said slowly. That means you have only 7 sets of hands left. That's not many. Oh, Korak said sadly. There's a dull claw in every set, Jarm said sadly. Don't worry, we'll help you. Friends are nice, Korak said with a fearful smile. I was pretty sure you were just manipulating us, Eru said with a smile. It's nice to be wrong sometimes. You'll be a great team leader, Lorik. I'm willing to follow you with pride. Lorik shook his head. No, I've been to the trial twice. If I'm the official team leader, we'll be less likely to get the full bonuses. I think you should register as a leader. That way I can advise you as a leader without costing the team any potential bonus points. How involved have you been? Go ahead, kiddo. Sorry about that. Hang on. Oy vey. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that, kiddo. Suddenly decides that this is the moment at which he must use the bathroom. And must ask for... there, sorry. Where was I? Okay. How involved have you been in your father's negotiations? Faru said with an appreciative purr. Not much, Lorik admitted, but I hope to be as good as him one day. Negotiation is the most interesting form of mental combat, Faru admitted. It might be worth studying. Agreed, Eru said while trying to mask his enthusiasm. It's not often I find myself cornered, but that was the first time anyone has ever cornered me with mere words. If I was more familiar with such exchanges, I'm sure I'd have seen a way out. I think I understand what you mean when you're talking ill of the negotiations between the elders and other races. There's no gnashing of teeth or bloodied claws, Miyako scoffed. That's not any form of combat I'd want to be a part of. Then do us all a favor, Lorik teased, and stay out of politics. What's that? Korak asked. Nothing you need to worry about, Jarm soothed. Good, Korak said with relief. The shuttle slowed as they approached the docking area at the testing grounds. Hundreds of shuttles had already arrived, and more were still en route. The testing area was immense, and the architecture was unlike any other building on the planet. Vast marble columns towered above them. Intricate gemstone mosaics adorned the ground and walkways. Beautiful fountains shot jets of water high into the air. Colorful gardens were spotted throughout the landscape, and flowering vines hung from the latticework ceiling far above. I've never seen a building like it before, Faru said in awe. That's because we didn't make it, Lorik said with a chuckle. At the end of our occupation of the Shusher homeworld, it was given to us as a gift. It took over a decade to bring it back here and reassemble it completely. The spoils of war, Miyako said appreciatively. Not exactly, Lorik said with a chuckle. The Shusher evolved from small felines, and they're known for being fickle, we'll just say. They offered it to us because they were bored with it and disliked our taste in architecture. The sky shuttle landed gently and the door opened. Good luck, the driver said, then glanced at Lorik and added, and try not to do anything stupid. And that's the end of the first chapter. And my brain is sushi and all over the place, so hope y'all enjoyed it. I'm going to cut it in a moment, but more ideas flowing for video version. Dude, my brain hurts. I actually hit the wall of being able to focus on what I was doing probably about, I don't know, a good solid 20 minutes ago. But powered through it. Yay! Yeah. Maybe I'll do chapter 2 sometime next week. I don't know. Depends on how people think of it. Let me know. And I'm going to stop the broadcast and maybe, I don't know, you guys think I should do a shuffle tonight or what? I'm already a little bit brain fried. Thanks, Heavy. I'll decide in a couple minutes. Okay, I'll see about get a hang going anyway. We'll see if we end up broadcasting or not from that one. Take care, y'all. Catch you next time.